Hi, Minesh Baxi here, and I'm really excited. Here is somebody that I listen to on a regular basis. When I'm driving, he's the man that I'm following. He interviews interesting people, teaching sales techniques and all of that stuff, and I'm just fascinated. So I'm really glad that Mike, you chose to be on the show with me today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always fun to be a guest since I do the interviewing most of the time.
Yeah, I know. Now you started what, 3 years ago? You said
I think we're just finishing year four. The first one was kind of a half year, but finishing season four, yeah.
season four. And for those who don't know, Mike is with Sandler Training Systems. And Sandler, if you don't know much about Sandler and you are in sales or in business, I promise you, it's the best investment you can make to learn about Sandler in terms of communication, selling, etc. And I personally can tell you, it's so much based on psychology of human nature. And I knew a lot of things before Sandler. For example, I knew transaction analysis. I knew DISC. Actually, I sell DISC assessments. Some of you may know that. Stop Hiring Losers is one of my books. But all of that integrated very well with Sandler training. Would you agree with me on that?
100%. I think people come to us for sales training. They want to get in front of more people. They want to close bigger deals. They want to close more of the people they get in front of. But when they've been involved in Sandler or when they're leaving us several years later, they usually say, man, this changed my life because of attitude stuff, the goal setting things that you teach. This is everything I wish they taught in school, but they didn't. Like, how to win an argument with your spouse or get your kid to show up on time, those kind of things.
Well, it's so interesting. And I know you got exposed to Sandler at a young age through your father. And my daughter at 16 is learning Sandler. And one day I was talking about, obviously, the negative reverse. For those who don't know, we won't go into detail on that right now. And she said, Dad, did you know I used it so that you could let me go to Chicago? And I was like, okay.
Well, hey, that is definitely one of the more popular techniques. We just had a podcast out on my show, the How to Succeed podcast, with Chris Underwood, the latest winner of Survivor, and he said in the season finale of Survivor that he used a negative reverse to win $1 million on that show. So it is certainly one of the most popular techniques.
Absolutely. And it's effective. So obviously that's the good one to use that. So let's just talk about you first. I know you came from radio background, you said, correct?
Yeah. So my dad was a Sandler trainer when I was in high school. You mentioned that. That's when I got started. But I didn't feel like in my 20s I could go in and say, hey, Mr. CEO, 50, 60-year-old CEO, here's what you should do with your sales team as a 22-year-old kid. And I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be on the radio. And so I was Romeo on Mix 93.3 and
Wow, that sounds
105.1
interesting.
Jack FM. Top 40 radio, and my last name's Montague, so it's not like I was cool or anything. Romeo's last name was Montague, so I stole that from Shakespeare. And had a blast. I did live DJing and entertainment. I opened for Billy Idol and Frankie Valli as a DJ, and had a whole ton of fun, but the pay, not so much. So eventually I decided I needed to make some money. I got into the advertising side of radio, building websites and doing internet marketing. I've actually been doing that since high school as well. And then became a full-time Sandler trainer 10 years ago with my dad. And then 5 years ago, I moved to work for the Sandler corporate office out of Baltimore. And so I'm now the global head of content for Sandler, and I get to use all three of those things. I entertain people on the podcast and webinars and on stage. I get to build websites and cool online courses and help write content for blogs and stuff on the internet. And then, of course, use my sales training and all the communication skills I learned from Sandler. So
Well, that's fantastic. That's awesome. So you have a podcast. So I want to feature the podcast in our conversation today. And again, the key part I want to talk about is today, podcast has become one of the easiest ways to get known, credibility-wise, content-wise, so that you are able to talk to the people that you might want to attract, both as clients or as referral partners. They get to see you as an expert, as somebody that they can connect with, and then that positions them very well. I mean, that's really what podcast is all about. So tell me a little bit about your journey, because obviously you did radio, now you do podcast. I think seems like a very simple, easy transition. Is that how it was, or you felt it was not the same?
Pretty much, yeah. I had a major head start with radio and the technology stuff that I was doing. So I built the websites for the Cumulus radio stations here in Kansas City in the 2000s, and I helped them broadcast online for the first time and start their podcasts. But that being said, like, I don't want that to scare people off either. So I started my own podcast with just a free like blog in my 20s, and I thought I'd do something cool about partying in Kansas City and where the greatest, entertainment and party things were and what was going on around Kansas City's entertainment scene when I was in my 20s. And that turned into an internet radio station that did pretty well on iTunes and stuff. And I ended up selling that when I went to work for Sandler. But it is really not as intimidating as people think nowadays. The technology has caught up. So doing it 20 years ago took some effort, but now you can record audio on your iPhone or on an Android phone and put that out on a podcast in any sort of blog, or there's really cheap podcasting software out there at Sandler. We use Libsyn. Stands for Library Syndication, LIBSYN.com. And I think it's less than $100 a month. And we've got over 1 million downloads now for the podcast. So it scales with you for $100 a month. If you got 1 million people to listen to what you have to say about you and your business, I'd say that's a pretty good investment of your time, effort, and energy. Even though that was a lot of time.
Absolutely. And not a lot of time either. I think from what you told, 2 to 4 hours a week possibly, and you are able to get a lot of mileage from it.
Yeah, so I set aside an hour for each interview. I try to do one a week myself, and then I collect some episodes from other people around the Sandler network too. And then depending on how much you edit or how bad you mess up the interview, it might take 1 to 2 hours to edit and post it, but not really bad. A couple hours worth of work. And with our subscribers, each episode gets about 4,000 downloads now, 4 years later. And we didn't start there. We started with 0. Like the first one, I think, was downloaded 100 times or whatever when I posted and shared it on social media for Sandler. And then we just built up. And so 300 episodes later, we have 4,000 subscribers, and those numbers start adding up. But really, it was just a weekly behavior of doing that 2 hours worth of work every week.
Well, that's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. So tell a couple of things which I would like to start with here. The number one part is you have an episode which is pretty much weekly. Who should listen to it, and what will they get from it?
It's called the How to Succeed podcast. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, anywhere you can get podcasts. And yeah, we try to do about 10 episodes a month. I record a weekly Monday interview, and it's really designed for how to succeed in life and business. We try to stay sales and management focused, but I've also interviewed rock stars like Pink's drummer or Olympic athletes about how they're successful, and try to talk a lot about mindset and things of how to just be successful at anything. So I don't limit it to business, but I think that's kind of our core focus is for salespeople, business owners, professionals that want to get better at what they do and stay there. Because a lot of times we hit into comfort zones and slide back, which is part of our tagline of the show too, is how to stay there.
Yes, I totally agree. And it's the easiest thing to do is to go into the comfort zone. And I keep telling people, the secret to success is very simple. Taking daily, uncomfortable, consistent action steps, which are obviously beyond your comfort zone, towards a major worthwhile goal that you have. And that makes it obviously the key part that you're talking about. So what are some of the topics that you feel people maybe are there in different, like sales and management in general, but what are some of the topics that you have covered that you feel will really be important, have found good value, will have come back and said, oh, those were really good episodes? Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. We're talking about some of my personal favorites. I mentioned some of the interviews that were fun for me was like a Pink's drummer. He talked about hacking the rock star attitude and how to get your mind right to be a performer, which I thought was great, and great for people that worry about public speaking or getting on stage and what they're going to say. So he wrote an awesome book on stage fright. We've interviewed people that have TED Talks and stuff about how to give a great TED Talk, or staying focused was another great episode, and time management stuff. There's a lot of Sandler trainer interviews. So personally, I have been studying that stuff for 20 years. Those aren't my personal favorite episodes. But people listening give us a lot of feedback on things like creating a sales cookbook, your recipe for success. How many dials, how many appointments, how many, first calls, second calls do you need to hit your goals and to make the amount of money that you want in your sales career? That one is our most downloaded episode after 4 years.
Very interesting. And what keeps, in terms of a lot of selling systems out there, why should somebody even check out Sandler?
Two things. First one is Sandler is different. This is a new tagline. It's not official for Sandler at all, Minesh. I'm giving you a peek on something I'm working on. But
sure.
I say it's for sales pros, not sales bros. Like the guys that are the traditional pushy used car salesman thing. We don't want to do that. We want to be the opposite of that. We want to be professionals. So when I found Sandler, it was I don't want to be a salesperson, but I do want to be a professional communicator. I want to help people solve their problems, and I want to help my business grow and help my business grow revenue and profit. So I think that's the first thing, is that Sandler is different because we're not teaching you to play the old traditional sales dog and pony show better, faster, or close stronger or harder. We're going to take you out of that game and play a different game that's about mutual respect, conversations, and uncovering people's needs, and really staying out of the way of people trying to buy what you're selling.
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, you want to become a trusted advisor. You're coming across as somebody who people will feel is looking out for their best interest, instead of somebody who is just, as you would say, just wants to make a buck. And if that's the case, then obviously that's the typical hustler that most people relate to, whether at a networking event or on a phone call or any of that stuff. Right. And you are trying to teach people to just be the opposite, as somebody who is coming across caring, compassionate, but still with a focus on results. You're not just having a nice conversation and being a professional visitor. You still have a goal, you still have a purpose, but you're not approaching it the way the other people do.
Well, that's brilliant, because you're right. I think when people try to be the kind of farmer, the relationship person, they lose the professional business objectives in that. So that's very astute of you. And so I think that's why I would choose the Sandler selling system. And then the training part of it, I found awesome, because we work on all three parts of what it takes to be successful. And that's what our podcast is about too, is your attitude, your behavior, what you're actually doing, and then the technique. So a lot of sales training you'll find will have great techniques. They have a great one-liner about how you should do this, or the things that you need to uncover in a decision-making process, or the emotional needs and the economic needs of the buyer. But they don't tell you how to keep your head up when you've gotten rejected and lost 7 deals in a row. Or they don't, some people are behavioralists and they say, hey, you just make more calls than everybody else, and if you do them harder and faster and more, you'll win. But that's great, but it doesn't take into account how you feel or getting better at your technique and practicing. And so Sandler's about all three: attitude, behavior, and technique. When you get all three of those right, man, it's exponential, your growth and change, compared to just continuing to try and work harder or longer to hit your goals.
And again, you are being authentic in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of you don't have to come across as a fake, somebody who's not really keen to help people, and you're trying to just pseudo do whatever it comes across from that perspective. So I think that's definitely positive. So again, so people who are interested in learning more about Sandler and just want to get comfortable with what Sandler is about, I think your podcast is a great way to start. They can, like you said, Google Play, they can go to iTunes. How to Succeed is the name.
Mhm.
title, and then there are so many episodes. People can pick any episodes, and they are reasonably length, like roughly 20 to 30 minutes. Is that correct in my estimate?
Yeah, yeah. Most of them we try to shoot for about 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, and that way there is enough information, but at the same time there is something of value to connect with, as well as leave saying, okay, yeah, I can go back to another episode or listen to the episode again, which I've done a few of these myself as well. So I think that's enough for people to know, at least to try to at least get access to it. That would be a good start, in my opinion. The second part is let's ask a quick question. What's something fun about you other than obviously the radio background? Any experience, anything that you want to share with people that they can connect with?
Sure. I would say I enjoy. We're recording. I don't know when it'll air, but the final episode of Star Wars is coming out when we're recording this right now,
Okay.
and I have a Star Wars Lego collection. It's over here on on the
Wow.
shelf. So maybe I'll just. If we're recording video, if you're
Yes,
listening to the
yes.
podcast, you won't hear it. But over here, you can
Oh,
see
look at
Yoda's
that.
up there, BB-8, R2D2.
Sure.
That's
My
my
son
fun
loves my son
hobby
loves
there.
Lego. Mhm.
Yeah. So I love that. I think I'm definitely a sci-fi closet nerd. I like all of the nerd culture stuff, really. Any type of technology, sci-fi, fantasy, that kind of thing.
Fantastic. So based on your personal experience, obviously professionally you succeeded, etc. What are a couple of key tips you would like people to, like words of wisdom from you?
Um, the first one I think would be about creativity. I think as children, we don't have trouble having fun, being ourselves, or being creative and learning. But as we get older, those things get sucked out of us from the school system and the work and deadlines and just pressure to perform. And um, I really work hard to keep things light and keep things fun and to do things like that's with the Lego hobby that is just for fun and for me. There's no purpose to that. I'm not trying to change the world, become a millionaire, sell my Lego creations for millions of dollars. I'm just doing it for fun for me to be creative and to make something. And I think a lot of times when people get stuck, frustrated or burn out in their career, it's because they stop just having fun and doing things because they love it and it's interesting and they're curious about what might happen.
Well, that's a good point. My thanks for sharing that, because my focus is quite often my travel with family. And one of
Yeah.
the fun facts about me is we have been to Disney World roughly 200 times in the last 5 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, because I'm able to go to Florida when I want to. I have a business which is relatively quite mobile, and what we would do normally during the time when we were like 3 4 months in Florida, roughly around 3 4 o'clock, my children we homeschool, so they have the flexibility. We are done with their part of the day, and we are done with my part of the day, and then we just hang out for a few hours at Disney, because we don't
That's
have to
awesome.
cram everything in one day. So we'll be going another a couple of weeks from now. We'll be going to Disney World again, and this time we have decided to do one of those VIP tours.
Yeah,
The whole
those are
day,
great
yeah.
backstage.
My friend's family and myself will just have my son's birthday, so we'll just have a fun time. And again, no lines, pretty much, right? Because you get the fast
Yeah,
pass for anything you want. So, and again, my thinking is more about connecting with my family. I just love it. And I think we all need to have some outlet, some version of creativity and fun that doesn't make us a boring, just a professional. All you want to do is sell, right? You know what I'm talking about?
yeah.
All
Have
you
you
want to
been
do is
to the
make
new
money.
Star Wars park yet?
No, that's one of the reasons I'm doing the
All
VIP
right.
tour.
Yeah, I'm going in March, so it's also
Okay.
a good promo here. Sandler Summit. Have you been to the Sandler Summit?
I have not, and I know you have it in March. When is that?
Yeah,
What dates is it?
it's in Orlando,
Correct.
March like 5th through the 7th. I think that
Okay. Well, I would love
Thursday,
to be
Friday.
there. I'm questioning the timing just because of I'm going to be possibly in India.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be visiting Taj Mahal, so I haven't been there in a long time. So I was born in Agra, which is where Taj Mahal is.
Well, that
Yeah, so
sounds
those are
brilliant. You can get recordings of the Sandler Summit, but a recording of the
exactly
Taj Mahal is not the same.
not the same, and my children haven't seen it, so I need to get them to see it. But I know last year you had, or this year, technically speaking, Andy McCready and Tony and all these other people, right? They had some great program there, and I watched all of these wonderful, wonderful experts share their wisdom, which was just fantastic. That was just amazing.
Yeah, we
So
had a
anyway,
really good time this year.
yeah, exactly. So once again, Mike, you've been such a joy to listen to, and now it's been a fun to interview you as a guest on my show, because I know one thing, that you are a fun guy, you have good information to share, and I know people can't be going wrong with going on how to succeed, etc. So thank you so much for your time here.
I appreciate it. Two things. One, if you're thinking about starting a podcast, just do it. It's super fun. And if you're in sales, you get a chance to interview people that you want to sell. So it's like a free sales call that people want to show up on, and then that they tell other people and share it out with. Podcasting can be an amazing business development tool. And two, if you want more information on Sandler, just go to sandler.com. If you go to sandler.com/sell, there's a free e-learning library, totally free. You can get all the podcasts, white papers, webinars that we do in there. And you just sign up with your email and you get hundreds of those assets to help you sell and lead better.
Yeah, and my podcast doesn't look very professional here, so if I can do it, you can do it.
if,
Thanks, Mike,
if
for
it
your
was,
time.